Hello and welcome to our latest video in Sunday Morning Together. We're currently working through a series called The Promised People, and this is week 3, where Moses has to be very brave and go to the Pharaoh and tell him to let God's people go.
For 400 years, God's people had been slaves in Egypt. God had a plan for his people. He wanted them to live in their own country where they could worship him. He did not want them to be slaves. So God chose Moses to lead them out of Egypt. God told Moses that he had a message for Pharaoh. The message was, "Pharaoh, let my people go." Moses did not feel like he would be a good leader, so God told him that Aaron, his brother, would be his helper, and they would go to Pharaoh together. What a shock Pharaoh must have had when Moses told him to let the Israelites leave Egypt and worship their own God. Pharaoh said, "No, the Israelites cannot leave Egypt," and he was so angry about it that he made the Israelites work even harder. The next time Moses came to the Pharaoh, he repeated the same message, "Let my people go." He warned Pharaoh that if he didn't agree, then God's power would make the Nile turn to blood. Pharaoh refused, so all the water turned to blood. All around Egypt, the people would not have had any water to drink. The Pharaoh still said no. So Moses and Aaron went back again and again, and with God's help, there were more plagues. After the water turned to blood, there were frogs, gnats, flies, death of livestock, boils, hailstorms, locusts, darkness. Every time the Pharaoh said no, even though the Pharaoh could see the Israelites were safe from all the plagues and the Egyptians were affected. Moses and Aaron went back one last time to say the final and worst plague was going to happen. This terrible last plague would be the death would pass through all of Egypt. It would mean the death of every firstborn person and animal in Egypt. If a person was the oldest in their family, then they would die. This would be the saddest plague of all, but God gave Moses special instructions for the Israelites. If the Israelites followed God's instructions, then death would pass over them. Their firstborn children and animals would not die. Because death would pass over them, this became known as Passover. The first instruction was that the people must prepare a Passover meal. This was a special meal, so there were special instructions. For instance, they could not just eat any meat for the meal. They were to prepare a perfect year-old male sheep or goat. Everyone was to kill the sheep or goat on the same day and at the same time. Then they were to take the blood from the animal and use a branch to spread it on the top and sides of their doorpost. This blood had a very special purpose because it showed that the people inside were God's people. On the night that the Egyptian firstborn and animals died, death would know to pass over the people in that house. The Israelites had to be ready to leave very quickly because this was going to be the plague that would change Pharaoh's mind. The Israelites obeyed God. They stayed inside and ate the meal just as God told them to. They knew that they would be safe because of the blood on their doorposts, but the Egyptians were not safe. It was a terrible night for them. So now it was time to get moving. Pharaoh was angry and told them to leave. There were thousands and thousands of Israelites, and they all packed up and left Egypt that very night.
It's great that you could join in for another week. If you'd like to continue your learning, there are some worksheets in the Google Drive link in the description of this video.